As I'm working with this project Fixture support, please open your assignment sheet, which I have given you under the same assignment on Canvas. Look to the pictorial and also two given orthographic views for more detailed dimensions. So we began for this project with the new file and starting on English, selecting English unit as a starting default unit for this project would be standard IPT on English unit. As you select the create to begin, selecting the sketch tool and select the plane, in this case XY plane, because I will be working with my first base feature as this front view. The front view is parallel to screen, therefore would be XY plane. Let's begin with creating a slot feature by selecting from menu. If you are not seeing the slot on the top, you may be seeing rectangle, that's by default, and you select, drop an arrow, and then pick slot center point option. As you notice, there are center to center option and also overall and center point. For this particular case, I'm selecting the center option, and center point would be coinciding with the origin. So make sure precisely select the origin as a first center point, and then pick on X direction, either on left or right, a point approximately on screen, and then make sure that your line is perfectly horizontal line. As you notice, constraint displays and indicating the line is perfectly horizontal. Left click and move to Y direction and pick another point any place on your graphics window. Then you select dimension and add given dimension. In this case 1.5 is the radius, and the center to center would be 7 on this case, which we will zoom in to see the entire drawing, and then select the point to point for dimensioning. If you select also circumference of this semicircle, that would pick the center for you. I prefer this method because then I don't have to accidentally pick another wrong point. This way you have to be very careful that your hand is not moving and you're picking the exact center point. But this way is much secure way to do that by selecting the arc, grabs the center for you. At this point I'm going to click any point on the screen, left click, and then type 7 for precise dimensioning from center to center. As you notice on the lower right corner, you see our sketch is fully constrained. Finish sketch, add extrude. Dimension is given already as 1 as a default. In this case it also happens to be 1. The direction is not that critical in this case. I will select OK tab to accept. Next, it's important part to where to begin my next feature. If you go back to assignment sheet, you notice that feature I'm going to create would be on side view, and that would be perfectly in the middle. So I'm going to select the next plane by selecting a little plus sign to the left of origin, expanding and displaying all the available axes and planes. In this case, you will select the plane, which is, as you notice, falls exactly in the midpoint, because I picked origin as a center. This would not be the case if I didn't select that starting point as the origin. In this case, we have YZ plane, which is perpendicular to XY plane, is my work plane. And create a new sketch. We select the line. Your first point would be perfectly snapped to that corner as I'm picking here, and then create the shape. Create the shape without being concerned on exact dimension at this point. Make sure your lines are perfectly horizontal or vertical. In case you missed, which I did on the first line, I will go back and change them. But try your best at the beginning to add that. So add that relation, horizontal and vertical relation. This happened to be not so straight up. Then I will select them and select the vertical in this case. Sorry, I said vertical, but it's parallel to x-axis would be horizontal. It's kind of misleading because going up, you imagine that would be vertical. But again, you are following this icon, not the one on lower left corner. This icon tells me I am on the x direction because I chose YZ plane, and that changed. Therefore, would be horizontal. And as you see, now it's perfectly on that plane is horizontal, means on the screen is vertical. Now it's time to add some basic dimension. If you look at your handout sheet, you have all the information given as far as the depth dimensions. In this case, I will have this dimension measured from this line. It's 1.25. If you do a little math there, you will find that is 1.25, and this one is given 1 inch, 1 unit in this case, and this as well is 1 because it has to be a uniform distance. I do need one more dimension that apparently is for height. In this case, if you do again some calculation, from the center to the top is given 5, and because it's very difficult to in this view to find that point exactly, then I will use this line and this line rather to dimension. But instead of the 5, I need to subtract another ½ inch because this is differences would be half here, and that would be 4.5. In other words, if you want to check that, you can see that from center to top it should be 5, and that would be the case. In this case, we have fully constrained sketch, finish sketch. Extrude. We have to make some changes to extrude rather than going in one direction. We will go in both directions to make him symmetric. And the size of that extrude is equal to diameter of that cylinder, which is given on the sheet. Here you see the diameter of the cylinder is 4. Therefore, the height would be equal to 4. That's the total extrude height, which divides equally in both directions. And now make sure that is the case. Selected symmetric, and 4 apply by saying OK. The next, perhaps you want to do that cylinder by selecting the face and selecting a circle tool from sketch menu, and then selecting the midpoint precisely. Be careful here that pick exactly the midpoint and pick exactly the corner here, defining the radius, which would be exactly that end. Rather than giving any numerical value, I am giving the relations. That means the center of this circle is perfectly in the midpoint of this line or this edge, and the radius distance is perfectly at that corner. Therefore, if I change this dimension later on for future from 4 to 5, cylinder adjusts to that new dimension as well. So that's what we refer to as a design intent. Always relations whenever possible, rather than adding the fixed dimension. As you see here, we don't need any more dimension here. This should be fully constrained. Fully constrained. Make sure that's the case, then finish the sketch. We used extrude. This time we extrude by joining these two, by changing the direction to opposite. What shows right now on negative, right now shows positive Z. We will change to negative Z direction, and then automatically switches back to cut mode. Make sure you select the join, and then select the height, which in this case would be 2 units.